Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah. I request all the students to join the lecture from the IIIT email IDs. Otherwise, it becomes really very difficult to give individual permissions.
Ma'am, we are joining through our triple IT email ID only, but it is asking for permission in that also.
Now I have enabled it. Some other students have joined using Google IDs. So I request you to join in from the college IDs verified because I have done the setting here. Still, it's asking me for permission all the time, so it's becoming really very difficult for me. Any solution for this, according to you?
Turn it off and turn it on again.
Sorry?
On the
Now I
setting.
guess the problem is solved because I am trying to join it again. Then it is like join now option is only visible. It is not asking for permission.
Actually, once
Okay,
you
because
are admitted, so you get the permission.
but few of the students have joined from the external email IDs, I feel. Okay, anyway, so hope my screen is visible to all of you, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in today's week and next week, we will be studying about market structures. And after we get some understanding of market structures, by the end of third week, I'll give you a group assignment, which will take you back to your respective innovation projects and will encourage you to understand the market structures for your respective projects that you had suggested in innovation group. Okay, so before I start with market structure,
Ma'am,
yes,
and there was a request at the second assignment, that is the negotiation one.
okay.
Ma'am, we are not able to do that because there is a lockdown in our area. That's why.
So I need to know students who are facing the problem. Probably they should message me on the email. I will talk directly to them. I would like to know the number of students who are facing such problems. If there is more than 50%, then I'll think about it. Yeah, so I request the CR to collect the students who are facing the problem, or else I'll conduct a poll on the classroom. Depending on the response, I'll decide on that assignment. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Okay, thank you. So today we will be setting out market structures. So anyone wants to share their brief understanding of what do they understand by market or market structures? And why is it important to read about market structures, especially when you're trying to create a product or service to be released for the wider public? So before we study any concept in any subject, we should always know why we are studying that. So the same question I throw at you. Why do you think study of market structures is important?
Uh, Ma'am, good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, first thing, the market structure is all about the other firms or all the firms that are continuously providing the facilities that the customers are demanding by uh, all the things that means customer wants. They try to give them the best that they can, and want to also want to make the money from that service they are providing. That's the basic thing, and we have to study this because if we want to make our means our new idea or our new firm to start something new company, then there must be the thing we must know that what is the demand in the market now, and how we can give that to our customers in relative to other shops.
Thank you, Vishal. I think it was a bit listen to you, but I got the point that you were trying to say, and I think you have briefly captured very rightly some important points of why it's important to understand the market structure. Anyone else wants to add anything? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the reason we should study market structure or try to understand what is happening in the market structure is that it helps us to understand uh, the pricing of the products or the similar products that are already in the market, which we are trying to introduce perhaps in a differentiated manner. So, and not only that, studying about market structure will also help us to determine how we should price our own products and services. The second reason to study market structure is we need to understand our potential to increase profitability both in the long term and short term. So these are the major two reasons that we should study market structure. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
So think of it almost like this: you're trying to introduce something new that is according to you, and so whenever we start any project in our teams or individually, we feel that what we are doing is perhaps very novel and has never been thought of. But there is almost always there are some people who are doing exactly or not, if not the same, something similar to what we have proposed or what we are doing. So it always helps us to know about what are the developments in our own area and what the other people are doing, so that we not only become more tactful in what we are trying to do, but also try to do what we are doing in a much more planned and informed manner. Otherwise, if we are not aware of what our competitors are doing or what other players in the market are doing, and then we will be little informed about how to place, project, position, and market our products and services. So, assuming that you have started to work on some product or services and you have a fair idea of what it will be doing, and even though it's not complete, you should again, at the parallel pace, try to understand what is the existing market structure of what you're trying to do. So in the long run, a firm's profitability, which means your firm's profitability, will be determined by the forces associated with the market structure within which it operates. So in a market structure, there are multiple forces which interact closely with each other to influence the pricing and the profit that your firm will undertake. Now, talking about market structure, what do you think, or what according to you is the meaning of market? What is the meaning of market? What do you mean by market? What is your understanding of market? Preferably by giving examples. Anyone? And I just wanted to also share that I'm also closely tracking the interactions of students in the virtual classroom. So anyone who makes a comment or participates, I'm closely monitoring that also. So that is also part of a slight 5% marks in the assessment. So is the question clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to share something?
Market, again, we can say the place.
Can you, Vishal, can you speak in the closer to the mic? It's a bit difficult to listen to you.
Is it audible now, ma'am?
It's much better. Thank you, Vishal.
Ma'am, it is the place where we buy or sell the things, means for our profit or our needs only.
Correct. And any example of market that comes up on the top of your head?
Ma'am, day to day needs that we want, we go to the market and take the things from that.
Right. So
Ma'am,
yes.
ma'am, whenever we set up a business or something, when we sell our products, our ideas, we usually sell them in the market, and the buyers also and our consumers also are attained through the markets only.
Right. So,
Ma'am, market is a place. It is an ecosystem created by us to sell a product. It is an ecosystem created by us.
so who are us?
Like whatever the product you want to sell or to reach out to the people. So that is the ecosystem. Like that is the business which we reach out to the people through.
Okay. Okay. So, in the traditional definition of market, that's what we think, that there are a group of people who are buying items and a group of people who are selling items. But when it comes to economics, the definition of markets becomes much more broader, and it's seen as in a much more wider perspective. So, in economics or in wider perspective, market is a place which is not only reduced to a particular place or geography in an area. It's not only a place where sellers and buyers of a particular commodity are interacting, but it's a wide area where they're interacting closely with each other, and it's not just limited to a geographical location. For example, internet. Internet is also a market. And these days, even WhatsApp has become a market. So any physical or non-physical space where buyers and sellers are interacting with each other, and there is some nature of transaction going on, that qualifies as a definition of market. Now, understanding the wider economic definition of market, what examples can you think of which could be a bit unconventional to be called as market, but nevertheless a market?
Ramesh, stock
Ma'am, can you
market.
please tell the question one again?
So I'm saying, having now understood the wider definition of market in economics, think of some unconventional scenarios which also qualify to be called as markets.
Ramesh, stock market.
Stock market, yeah. So it's basically done online or using agents. So do you think WhatsApp qualifies as a market as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. There are few business channels on WhatsApp.
Ma'am, because ma'am, even WhatsApp understood the nowadays people use a lot of their business transaction or to interact with their clients through WhatsApp. That's why they created another app that is WhatsApp Business.
Okay.
Exactly.
And think about the current times we are living in. So we are living in COVID times. And what kind of markets become much more relevant in these times where physical businesses are being forced to shut down?
IT
Online
sector.
market.
Yes, ma'am, IT sector.
Okay. What in IT sector?
Ma'am,
Online.
entertainment, music, advertising.
Advertising, yes. So these are much more. Yes, please.
Ma'am, like OTT platform which
Yes, OTP platform also. In fact, when you think about online markets, in fact, right from purchasing to clothes to electronics to books, even to food, most of the markets have become online, and especially in COVID times, where local businesses are actually at the receiving end. Many of the online markets have also shut down because of COVID, because it's not only online markets, because they are sometimes dependent on physical availability of people also and transportation also. So, but basically in economics, when we talk about market, you have to understand it's a wider perspective. And as we go through this entire module of entrepreneurship, I always want you to keep in the back of your mind your innovation projects and try to relate everything that you hear to your projects. Okay. So the term market refers not necessarily to a place, but always to a commodity and the buyers and sellers who are in direct competition with each other. So another aspect of market is competition. So basically a market structure is a market of goods and services, and which can be defined in two aspects: the nature of competition in that market and the degree of competition. So what sort of competition operates between products which are similar or somewhat similar to each other, and how much is the degree of competition in the market. And based on this, when a new entry into the market comes up, the firm will decide or make major of its decision of positioning and pricing of its product based on the market structure, always keeping eye on making profit. So today we will focus on the determinants of market structure. So suppose this is a grocery shop, traditionally called a sabji mandi. So think of this as an example when you think of determinants of market structure. And what do you think could be the determinants of market structure?
Ma'am, consumer relationship, trust.
Okay, so here we are talking about the things that we can first of all see physically. So the thing that you mentioned, customer relationship and trust, they are extremely important for the nature of interaction between the firm and its consumers. But suppose you are trying to place your product in the market, and you know by market structure it's the nature and the degree of competition. So what are the factors which could really affect this nature of competition and the degree of competition?
Ma'am,
Prices.
Price
Right? Yes.
ma'am, what type of
and
product we
quality.
are giving?
Quality. And so price is always dependent on which aspects?
Demand.
Demand and
Demand.
supply.
Demand and supply. So perhaps we can say that number and nature of sellers and buyers could be the determinants of market structure. So dependent on buyers and sellers, we can perhaps understand the amount of or the nature of competition that exists in a market, right? So what are the other determinants of market structure?
The number of choices we get, options to choose from.
Okay, so the wide variety of products that we have.
Ma'am, level of production to the market means size of the farms and different things.
Okay. So the nature of product, as you rightly pointed out, there's a different degree of competition and nature of competition depending on a wide variety of products available in the market.
Ma'am, taxes.
Location of the market.
Taxes, yes. So, but you know, taxes always again can be related back to the nature of buyers and sellers also in some manner, and also the nature of product.
Ma'am, transportation.
Then again, that is also a cost which can be related to the product. All these things are inherent in the product. The other two things that determine market structure are the conditions of entry and exit from the market. So how easy is it to enter a market to sell a particular item, or how easy is it to exit? And we will be reading about this and understanding these in detail also. And the last determinant of market structure is economies of scale. So it's a bit of a technical concept, but we will understand it as we proceed. So when we talk about number and nature of sellers, so when there are large number of sellers in a perfect competition, then it determines a market structure. That means we can know the nature and degree of competition. So can you think of any market where exists a large number of sellers in a perfect competition? So perfect competition means that anyone can sell or sell the product. So there are multiple firms selling perhaps the same item or differentiated item, and they are perfectly in competition with each other.
Mall.
Ma'am, on e-commerce website Alibaba in China, back in 2002 when there was SARS spreading all over China, so they
Okay.
so they had a very great shot in that sector because everyone was sitting at home and people who were there, the government forced each and everyone to pay extra taxes just that the economy get boosted. So people weren't able to rent shops so that they can have physical shops. So what they people of China started to doing, they were at homes and they opened virtual shops at Alibaba, and it was a great
I'm sure.
market over there. Yeah.
So thank you, Rohan, for that great example. Anyone else wants to share?
Ma'am, malls.
So malls. So basically, malls sell different items or even same items in a particular location. Yeah. So that could also be an example.
Vegetable market.
Vegetable market, definitely, definitely. So when you go to buy groceries in pre-COVID times, you would normally see lots of sellers selling the same vegetables, and then you would go to them and then seek the pricing of the vegetables. When there is a single seller, that means there is only one seller. Then that kind of market is called as pure monopoly. And we will be dealing with these definitions much more formally in this next week. So can you think of a pure monopoly market, or is it even possible to have a pure monopoly market?
Geo.
Yes, ma'am.
But Bharti Airtel and Vodafone and Idea are still there. So it definitely has the maximum consumers or maximum number of people who are using their products. But monopoly means that you are the only one who is selling that kind of product. So how does Jio qualify as a monopoly then? Can you please explain?
Ma'am, I can give one of my personal example, my personal experience. Once I was there in a market, the Crawford market, which we have in Mumbai. So what they do is they sell products at a very cheap prices, and they sell original products. It's kind of a wholesale market. So me and my friend were trying to buy raspberries, and it was imported raspberries. So the entire market had only one seller. No matter how much I tried to bargain with each and every seller, they said only there is only one outlet in this market. That's that person that sells, and he decide what's the price of the raspberry. So no
Okay.
matter how much you try to go to other sellers or to convince them to even arrange raspberry, they won't be able to arrange it because he knows how to do it. So he had quite a monopoly in the market.
Right. And one very important aspect in the example that you have given is the location. In that particular place where you went with your friend, that raspberry seller was the only person who was selling it. So location becomes extremely important as well. If he was in some other place where there were other sellers, then he would not have that privilege of monopoly. So location always also becomes very important when we talk about monopoly. And as a result of monopoly, you are obviously the one who determines the pricing of your products.
One of the markets I think where monopoly exists is healthcare sector because the companies which produce medicines they have a patent for each medicine and until and unless their patent doesn't expire, no one else is allowed to market that medicine under that banner.
Yeah, that could be one example of a monopoly, especially when a new vaccine is coming up or a new medicine is coming up.
Exactly, ma'am.
As that vaccine and medicine become more popular, then perhaps the company gives other medical companies also the vitals to produce that medicine, especially if it has to be produced at a global level, for example, for COVID also.
One more example of monopoly, I think, ma'am, Fevicol. When I have seen adhesive for furnitures and all that thing, only Fevicol I see at everyone's home, ma'am. Pidilite's Fevicol.
Very, very good observation, Shiva. So other types of nature of sellers is when there are only two sellers, that qualifies as duopoly. Then when there are few sellers, that is called as oligopoly, and when there are many sellers of a differentiated product, that is also determines a market structure. So can you think of a market structure in which there are only two sellers predominantly?
Operating system, Microsoft and Apple.
Yeah. Good example.
I mean, electricity, Tata and Reliance.
Yes, yes. Great. So having understood how the nature of sellers actually are determinants of market structure, let's move on to how the nature of buyers influences the market structure. So if there is only single buyer in the market, this is the buyer's monopoly and is called as monopsony. Such markets exist for local labor employed in one large employer. So in contemporary times, what do you think could qualify as monopsony? So when you think of examples, always think about examples as location specific. So what might qualify as monopsony in, for example, Mumbai might not qualify as monopsony in some maybe rural area in Nagpur, or may qualify as a monopsony over there. So I'll give you an example. For example, in employment firm operating in a rural area. Okay. And so it is operating over there, and it is the only place which is giving jobs to the people over there. So it could also qualify as a monopsony market because it's essentially buying the human resource to do its work. And so that firm determines the how much salary will be given to the people who are working over there. And unfortunately, many times when this kind of thing happens and there is no organizational ethics at place and there is no regulating body, the firm actually ends up exploiting the people in that area. So that is how the nature of buyers also determines the market structure. Similarly, so these are all technical terms which we must know, even though they might not exist as cleanly as they are in technical books, but they provide us a fruitful idea to understand from an upper level what a market structure is. When two buyers are jointly in the market, then it's called as duopsony market. And examples would be buyers of cash crops. So for example, after cultivation of the crops and the grains, when sellers go to the Anaj Mandi to sell their cash crops or even grains, there also this kind of market wherein certain buyers are there, that also considerably influences the nature of the market structure. Then third, coming to the nature of the product. The nature of product also influences the degree of competition and the nature of competition in the market. So when we talk about product, we generally talk about something called as product differentiation. The process of distinguishing a product or service from others to make it more appealing to a specific target market. So can you think of an example of any product and how it is differentiated? So differentiation of a product means you are selling more or less the same product, but it's different in some ways or the other from the other competitors.
Ma'am, Colgate,
Toothpaste.
it's selling just toothpaste, but the trust that the firm has built with its consumer
Okay.
really phenomenal. No matter what happens, they try to advertise like other competitors of Colgate or Pepsodent. Pepsodent tries to advertise the company as children friendly. They bring in in the end of advertisements that how. But each and every toothpaste is doing the same thing. But the relationship that Colgate has with the consumers is extremely, extremely extraordinary.
Okay. So maybe what you're trying to say is the customer retention or the customer
Yes,
loyalty.
ma'am.
But I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
a toothpaste as a product is highly differentiated also because Pepsodent and then Dabur Red and other companies, they try to sell essentially the same product which we use to brush our teeth with, but they try to introduce some novelty in their products. So that is what is meant by product differentiation, and that also determines market structure. So in this slide, as you can see, okay, what do you see in the first image of the slide? So these are the examples of product differentiation. So what is it that you can see from the slide?
A specific product has been sold more.
Yeah, so if you can see that they are essentially perhaps breakfast cereals, and there are so many companies which are selling these breakfast cereals, and all of them have this difference in what they're trying to sell, and essentially the product remains the same, but it is highly differentiated. So this is one of the examples of product differentiation. Then even in beverage industry, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Sprite, Thumbs Up, these are all basically almost, because there is a lot of carbonated beverages, but they are still differentiated from each other. And the way in which a product is differentiated from the other product goes a long way in determining the success and the adoption of that product in the consumer market. And that is why product differentiation becomes a very crucial element when it comes to understanding market structure. Perhaps you are trying to launch some other toothpaste or some other carbonated beverage tomorrow, and then you will have to know and understand what kind of existing products exist and how are they differentiated, and how is it that I can bring it something that is different and would be even exciting for the buyers. And similarly, in the third, also I think these are some canned beans, and which are also showing the same examples of product differentiation. So tell me of a place where you can go, and next time when you go, you can actually see that there are different product differentiations. Which are these places where you can usually spot such product differentiation?
Supermarkets.
Supermarket, yeah. In fact, if you go at Walmart also, you can see product differentiation. What about
Amazon. Online markets.
online market? Yes, correct.
Ma'am, a typical example might be a Patanjali store.
Patanjali store. You mean to say product differentiation?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please elaborate?
Like, ma'am, they have many things stocked at a single place, but there are sometimes things of the same type, but they are selling it on different purposes.
Okay. So, if there is a product differentiation, which means essentially the product is same, but they differ from each other in some manner, and the products are essentially close substitutes, and the market is characterized by monopolistic competition. So when the product is same and it is differentiated, so that means different products are essentially the close substitute. So if on the supermarket you go, and in one corner of the supermarket, if you see shelves of, let's say, canned beans, and then that is an example of monopolistic competition. In the picture, you can see that different companies of taxis are there, different companies of clothing are there, hotels, restaurant, hairdressing. So these are all examples of monopolistic competition. On the other hand, in case of no product differentiation, that means they're selling exactly the same product without any differentiation, then that market is perfect competition. Few of the examples could be selling specific items on the internet. For example, books. And essentially, when we are buying books online, we tend to compare the prices across eBay, Amazon, Flipkart, or some other. In our own real life, in our own near and lives where we live, what do you think qualifies best for the perfect competition?
In Sabzi Mandi?
Sabzi mandi, yes. Maybe kirana stores
Yes, ma'am.
where you buy rice or wheat, vegetable, fruit, even
Stationery
drink
shops.
juice. Stationery shops, yes. So that is perfect competition in which there is no product differentiation, and there are multiple firms which are selling not just close substitutes but exactly the same item, and that qualifies as perfect competition. On the other hand, if a product is completely different from other products and it has no close substitutes whatsoever, it's called as pure monopoly in the market. And pure monopoly, technically in real world, it's difficult. It's almost impossible that pure monopoly exists. However, close to pure monopoly does exist, and it is always location specific. So in a particular area, if there is only one company that provides water in that area, there is only one water tanker company in a particular area, then that tanker company would qualify as a pure monopoly. In fact, if you read the diamonds history, if you read about diamonds history, then there was this company De Beers, which has had a pure monopoly of diamonds in the market. In fact, there is Netflix documentary also on how diamond came to be known as such precious product that it is considered to be as today. And I strongly recommend you to see, because that talks about how De Beers as a company rose to pure monopoly for diamond. Eventually it did fall out, but that gives a good indication of pure monopoly. Next, few of the conditions of market structure is that what are the entry and exit conditions. So like it means that which firm can actually enter into the market and which can exit from the market. So in case of, let's say, perfect competition, what do you think? Are there any conditions for entry into the market when it comes to perfect competition? So
Yes, ma'am.
the perfect competition definition is there is no product differentiation. So what do you think? What is the nature of entry into the market?
Ma'am,
Anybody
others
Ma'am,
can
have to
enter
pay.
at any time.
Correct. So firms are free to enter and exit from that market space in perfect competition. Yeah.
but ma'am, in those market, it also matters, no? That if you're having a pure monopoly, then how much market share do you own?
Yes. So if you are having a pure monopoly, then automatically other
No,
firms
ma'am, sorry,
will
ma'am.
enter.
Perfect competition, as we are talking, that each and everyone is selling the same product.
Yeah.
So the bigger my market share, the bigger will be my profits, because all of them are selling the same thing.
Yes.
Like
Correct.
in case of DMart and the normal grocery store, people take out time on their Sundays and go to DMart rather than going to the normal kirana stores.
Yeah. I think in case of DMart, the other advantage that people feel is perhaps prices also get lowered in such kind of places.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And that actually takes us to the economies of scale that we will be discussing next.
Because
So
ma'am, itself, DMart, it's a very big business. No,
yes,
it buys a very large product, like a bulk products from other companies. If it's buying
absolutely.
Parle biscuits or anything, it buys in bulk, so they have to break their prices.
Yes, yes. But even then, after breaking prices, what do you think? Are they still able to make the profit loss, or how does it work for them?
Yes, ma'am. Because what Rakesh Damani does in DMart, what he does is that he pays in advance to other. Like if he's buying from Coca-Cola, he pays in advance so that the person whom is buying from, like if he's buying uh, like some 10,000 bottles of Coca-Cola, then he pays in advance. So Coca-Cola prefers him over other people and gives him Coca-Cola at a little bit lower price,
Okay,
and he's able to attract many consumers at that very point by selling them Coca-Cola at a relatively lower price. So people also go there. So there is no outstanding products at
correct.
like in his inventories.
So in the long term, DMart actually makes profit because
Yes, ma'am.
its cost per unit is much less than the other stores like Kirana stores and everything.
Then
Yeah,
it
ma'am.
means, ma'am, that being a financially start means having a great finance at behind you. Then it also helps a lot in starting a business.
Yeah, in fact, I would say how much you can absorb getting failed depends on how much finance you have when you start off with. When you have a lot of money, you can actually absorb the shock of greater failure as compared to when you don't have that much of money to start off with. Or in fact, if the idea is strong enough, and even if you meet with lots of failures, but still, if you persist in an idea because you believe in that, then it's worth exploring. So no company becomes success overnight. Even the big companies that we know of today, they have had their own shares of extremely nerve-breaking failures before they actually emerged as uh, big wigs in the market. So that is always important to remember. So how firms can enter and exit into the market determines the market structure. So again, when you look back to your own innovation products and projects, it will be worthwhile to contemplate that, okay, what are the conditions and which kind of markets that we can enter into, and how do we operate in that particular area. The next concept is economies of scale. So economies of scale, it's a bit technical concept, and it's very complex also, but I'll try to explain in a simpler manner. So it is also one of the determinants of market structure. So what happens is, essentially it means that as an organization scales over the period of time and increases its output, it leads to lower average cost over the period of time. So a bigger firm profits much more as compared to a smaller firm selling the same product or item because of economies of scale. It means that the firms have increased in size and they become much more efficient. Now, what could be the reason behind them becoming more efficient? Perhaps they have become much more automated, so they don't need as many human resources as they needed before. Their operation services have much more become efficient. The way they conduct their business has become much more efficient. So economies of scale occurs when increasing output leads to lower long run average costs. So the cost per unit decreases, and so large companies which are able to produce more by spreading the cost of production over a large amount of goods, they essentially benefit from the economies of scale. And as a result of that, so if there is a company which is profiting because of economies of scale, then over the period of time, because its cost per unit is become less and people are buying more of its items, so in the end it ends up becoming a monopoly market. And that is why entry into that kind of market becomes extremely difficult. So that is what we understand by the economies of scale. So if you can look at this plot, you can see that in the Q2 as compared to Q1, so the cost, actually the average cost has decreased as compared to the Q1, and this is essentially what you will see when it comes to larger firms. And because of this, entry into the market becomes very difficult for other new players. So it always helps to have a upper hand in a market in which you are trying to sell a product or service. So why economies of scale leads to lower cost per unit cost? As I discussed, your labor becomes specialized as technologies improve your operations and perhaps factory structures, and the way you deal with things becomes much more efficient. And that is why lower investment is required as you go over the period of time, and lower cost of capital and operational efficiency. So use of IT and marketing and accounting leads to better running of the organization. And as a result of which, the cost that you were putting in previously decrease. So how economies of scale affects market structure? Firms that achieve large economies of scale in production grow large in comparison to others in an industry. And because of that, ultimately what consumer wants is less price for the product. And these organizations are able to do that because they are increasing production at such a high rate. And ultimately, the consumer will be more attracted to these firms which are selling the products. So let's come share DMart or Big Bazaar or even Walmart or even online groceries. And as a result of which, few firms are left to compete with each other. And this leads often to emergence of oligopoly. So oligopoly basically means it's not pure monopoly, but there are few firms, but there are not many firms. There are just a few firms which are engaging in competition with each other. However, if one firm attains economies of scale to such a large extent that it is able to meet the entire market demand and its the price is also low, then that market qualifies as monopoly, in which case it becomes extremely difficult and challenging for new companies to enter into the market. So these are the 5 market structures which I alluded to in the lecture of today. Perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, duopoly, and monopoly. In next week's lecture, we will discuss much more detail about these market structures and using examples. And after that, I think you will have to go back to your innovation assignments and then try to understand that what kind of market structure your product or your service belongs to, and what are the nature of buyers, what are the nature of sellers, what is the nature of your product, is it differentiated, is it a substitute for an existing product? If it is a substitute, then how is it different from the existing product? And if it's not a substitute, if it's a novel product, then how do you hope to enter into the market, and what kind of competition you will be entering into? And does any firm exist which has achieved economies of scale in the area of product or service that you are trying to introduce in the market? And these will be important things that you can relate to as we go on in the next lecture of the next week. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, you said that the larger the company would be, the more easily it will be able to make profits.
Yeah.
But the more the company grows, it also hampers the quality of its products, and the company shifts its focus more towards its profit rather than the, you can say, innovation towards the product. Like, to just give you an example, like when Ford was having monopoly over the entire market because of Model T, and whereas on the other side we have other companies like Ferrari, and which are just popping up at that point of time. So they were able to make much faster cars because they had a very small group of concentrated
Okay.
people working on this, working on a single product day in and day out. Whereas the Model T people, that is Ford, they were more focused on how to increase the production and just keep on producing Model T. So in that, Ford lost its market share to Ferrari.
So the thing that normally when we consider about increasing the number of products, we must always also pay attention to quality. So when we talk about economies of scale, if you are increasing the product in an inveterate manner, however, the quality of the product is not good, or in fact, it is not helping the customers and it's not meeting the needs of the customer, then it will defeat the purpose. So definitely, as you scale up, you always have to consider the quality. So it's not a axiom. So it's not an axiom that as your company grows, it will make profit. But growth is also a sign of progress. But if it's not meeting with the desired products or services that consumer needs, then that growth can quickly turn into a Pyrrhic victory.
So, ma'am, what should a company focus on rather than, would it focus on growing or more on innovation, like to make more quality products and more innovation? Ma'am?
Hello. Sorry, I lost my internet connectivity. Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
So, as I was
Ma'am.
saying, the last thing I heard you saying was, what should a company focus on? I think the company should always focus on the customer needs and should always keep abreast with how the customer needs are transitioning and transforming. If so, suppose if consumer like your product X today, but over the period of 20 years, you might have to transition that product into X2 or X3 as meeting with the demands of the people. So it's always customers you should be focusing on, a company should be focusing on, because it's ultimately them who can make or break the fortune of a company. So that becomes very important.
I think, ma'am, Nokia is a great example of
Yeah.
this.
So Nokia could not keep up with the innovation that was coming up in the smartphone market. And that is definitely one of the biggest lessons in being resistant to changes. Resistance by nature to the changes in life brings a lot of, in fact, loss and suffering, not only to a firm but also to people. So it's good to adapt, but not at the cost of being a silent follower. You should always also question it. So it's always a healthy mix of non-resistance and skepticism. Any other
Ma'am,
questions?
ma'am, how can one stop from like preventing a company or firm from becoming a monopoly? Or like we see Facebook, it's buying, it has bought Instagram and WhatsApp and all. So it's becoming a monopoly. So how can we not fall prey to its like future out? Like,
So
how can we prevent it?
one question that becomes more important before we answer that is, uh, why is rising of monopoly disadvantageous? What is it that you're trying to solve when you're trying to restrict monopoly?
It's
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am, giving the chance to the others means who have greater ideas than that doing the monopoly, but we are not giving him the chance to come up and have that.
Okay.
I think there are already market capturing laws that are placed in the constitution because Jio had to fight a case against Airtel and Idea when they launched such kind of plans where they had a competitive pricing against the data which they were providing. So
Yes.
there exist market capturing laws presently. So I don't think that it is a problem.
In fact, there is an app which can actually tell you how much net you use in an entire day. Okay, if some of you have Geo SIMs in your mobiles, you can actually track in a month how much you are using and how much you are paying. That small experiment will tell you a lot about the reality of the Geo internet plans and what is the cost of those plans. So before you bring down anything when you're talking about monopoly, you must be very careful about the cost of monopoly to you or your firm. If you're talking about Facebook is buying WhatsApp, Instagram, it is already bought. Yeah, so then you should first question yourself that how is it unacceptable that Facebook is quickly becoming a monopoly? In how is it threatening that we should prevent this monopolization of Facebook?
Like, ma'am, it's new policy of WhatsApp that a big controversial policy recently. So,
Okay.
like privacy and all. So mostly it's connecting Facebook users' data to WhatsApp and that kind of information. They're being linked, and maybe they can share it with the third-party users. So not only privacy, but in future there may be some other policies they may introduce to us. So it
So
may
this
be
is a
problematic.
question of ethical concern. Okay, and and you know that people who sold Instagram or WhatsApp to Facebook, they would have been aware that after they get rid of their product, Facebook will do or use it in to for its own benefit. And ultimately, you cannot deny that money, power, and authority are extremely important things when it comes to market. So there is a tendency for ethics to get a bit diluted down, but again, customers hold the power. If customers raise issues against it, or even federal governments object to it, then definitely actions can be taken. But firms, naturally in their essence, they are commerce-based companies, and it's their prerogative to earn profit. But if an external party has to intervene, then it definitely has to be customers or the federal government who can actually put a barrier to the monopolization. I think so.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other questions? Are you facing any problems with the assignment? Except from the negotiation, I'll launch the survey for it. But in the place of that, I think I'll have to put up another assignment.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, and are you enjoying the article reading on Women Do Not Ask?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll introduce a couple of more readings and much more case studies for you, real life case studies that will give you a good perspective. And for today's essential reading, I will. So my essential readings have been very reduced for this one. So for this week, I have given you a reading on Warren Buffett's 1997 email exchange on Microsoft. So it's an email exchange I think you must read about. So in which Warren Buffett is talking about the market to a Microsoft employee, and it's a very interesting read. So I think you will enjoy reading it. And please watch the Netflix documentary on De Beers Diamonds. It's a good peek into how a monopoly comes into existence. And even diamond as a product, how did it become so famous? In fact, that is also a question that puzzles people all over the world. And now the value it has come to attain. It's very intriguing to read about that. So I'll try to share that link also on the classroom. So thank you so much for your time, and please write to me if you are facing any problems in the assignments or anything else.
You can take a poll.
I will take a poll, not right now because other students have left. I'll put it on the classroom. Will that be okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.